Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. Forgive my appearance. I'm pretty sure I have like eyeshadow dripping down here. I'm in like this very old pajama like sweatshirt thing, and I've had the makeup on for a long time, but I have been in the purging mood, and I recently decided, aside from the fact that I need more lip gloss is also what I decided, but I recently decided to get rid of a bunch of books that either I've read and know that I don't plan to reread, and I don't foresee I don't see my mom or sister like wanting them, or I just don't see myself, like I'm no longer interested in reading them. I live in a smaller apartment, and so I feel like my space is just limited, and I'm just feeling like overwhelmed by clutter lately. So I think it's over 30 books today that I have decided to unhaul, and I'm gonna try listing them on Pango Books. That's something I've never done before, but I figured maybe I could sell them there and then I would have more book money or makeup money for the future. So I'll leave my Pango Books listed down below if you're interested in any of these books, and if not, that's totally fine too. But if you are interested in seeing what books I'm deciding to unhaul, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, and you want to be, I would love for you to be. Also, like and subscribe, and other than that, let's jump into the video. Okay, I think I might just like stack these books next to me as before we start, maybe. Okay, I will also note that I'm currently in like the biggest reading slump of life. Like I literally have not felt motivated to read in 4 months. Like I feel like the last time I was excited about reading was like October, so like 5 months. Okay, I added a bit of gloss, so I'm feeling better about the lips. The hair though, it's got a mind of its own. Okay, haven't felt like reading literally at all, so I hope I don't regret any of these unhauls, but we can start with this book right here because I've been trying to read this book. I've like started this book and gotten about halfway through, and it's taken me over a month to get halfway through. This book, I can remember where I was when I finished reading this book for the first time. This used to be an absolute favorite book of mine, and it was a book that I wanted to read again to decide if it was a 5-star still. I'm still only halfway through the book. I did buy it on Audible so that I can try and listen to it. As I'm reading it, I'm just like, how did like this younger version of myself, like over 10 years ago, like maybe about 20 years ago, I'm honestly not sure. When was this published? Do you remember in school where they like, when they taught you like where to find all the publishing information? Like, where is that? Anyway, a much younger version of myself loved this book, and I am just so curious as to how, because it feels like a fever dream as I'm reading this. Like I'm like, what in the heck is actually going on? And I just don't care. So I will listen to the audiobook. I do not anticipate this will still be a 5-star read, and I'm truly just over it. Like I do not ever see myself reading this again. So that is the first book we're unhauling. I also did unhaul Credence, but I listed these books all a couple days ago on Pango Books, and that book actually sold. So bless your heart to whoever is going to be reading that troubled taboo thing. Good luck to them. I'm just not a huge Penelope Douglas fan. Okay, I have a couple of Tessa Bailey books. I've just decided I don't think I really care for Tessa Bailey's writing. I don't think she, like, I don't think she's like the spicy queen. Like there are definitely better spicy authors than her. Granted, like, yes, I appreciate that she puts spice in there and it's fun, and you know, it's fun to read, but I don't think she's the best. So It Happened One Summer. This was like a fun time to read, but I don't ever see myself caring enough to read this again. Like if I were to reread like a summer beachy read such as this again, there's other books I would be more interested in than this. I also feel like I'm being very mean-spirited, and it could just be because I'm so over being in this reading slump. So if I'm coming across a little feisty and a little mean, I apologize. But I liked this book. I think I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, but it wasn't a 4-star book that I like ever see myself really caring to read again. And then I also have My Killer Vacation, and I also rated this 4 stars. I think if I were to reread this, I probably wouldn't rate this 4 stars, but at the very dark time in my life when I read this. Like, I think back to the month that I read this in, and that was like quite possibly one of the most traumatic months I have lived through in my years of existence. This was exactly what I needed. This fluffy little thing was exactly what I needed, and I appreciate it for this. But also, even like looking at this book, I can remember reading this book was days before an incredibly traumatic thing happened in my life, and so this kind of just like brings back those memories. We don't need that. Okay, this book I absolutely loved, and actually I feel like my mom would actually like maybe love this book. This was just so cute and so sweet, but I feel like this was like, I read it once and like I probably won't read this one again, only because I feel like I would like to read other light fluffy things like this that I haven't read yet. And I kind of like know everything that happens in this book. I would recommend this book, I would, but truly I have decided that my shelves, all I have space around my shelves in the space that I currently have right now is books that I either haven't read and anticipate I will read or plan to read, or books that I love so much that I would either lend them to friends and family or reread myself. Maybe someday when I live in a larger space and I have larger bookshelves, I would keep more books. I also don't plan to be the world's next booktube sensation, so like to have all the books around to like hold up, I just, you know, I'm letting go of that because the clutter is feeling like too much. I would absolutely recommend this book. This was such a fun, lighthearted, easy beach read, pool read, whatever it might be, and I'm definitely interested in picking up more books from this author. In fact, I purchased one last summer. I plan to read this summer if I ever get out of this reading hole, but I just don't feel like I need to keep this on my shelves. I feel like my mom might like that one though, so maybe I will actually give that one to her. All right, I have both Icebreaker and Wildfire by Hannah Grace, and I've decided I just don't think Hannah Grace is the author for me. I did rate, I believe I rated Icebreaker 4 out of 5. I think if I were to read this again, I would rate it probably maybe like a 3.5. And then I think I gave Wildfire either a 2 or a 3 star. I was not into this one. I feel like this like possibly kickstarted my reading slump. I just don't think I care for Hannah Grace's writing as much as I do other authors, and I don't feel like she entertains me in the way that I personally want to be entertained. Her characters don't feel like, I don't get quite as much of a connection to her characters as I do other authors' characters, and I am someone who loves to literally feel like I am like the best friend of the characters that I'm reading. Like, I love to feel like I know them so much and can really connect and relate to them, and I just didn't get that from these two, so I don't necessarily know I would pick up another book by her. Perhaps if there was a plot that really spoke to me, I would, but these are not books that I personally plan to reread, so I will be unhauling those. I also have Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I thought this was, I think I gave this a 3 star. Reflecting back, I think this book is kind of awful. Like, the third act breakup, I remember reading this book and I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep going because like everybody loves this book, and there were moments that I enjoyed in this book. The third act breakup, and also there's a moment, I don't know if this is a spoiler for or not, so maybe like fast forward like 20 seconds, but at the end of the book, when the main male character, I can't even remember his name, when he sings to the female character, I remember like right before he started doing it thinking to myself, if this is what he does, I actually might need a barf bucket as I'm reading this. This is the cheesiest, just most ridiculous thing ever. And then he did, and I was like, okay. I was just not impressed. My friend Emily from Emily and Max is her makeup channel, and then she also is McKenna's Mama, who is also a huge inspiration into like me getting back into reading. I know she's read, I think, at least books 2 and 3, if not 4 in this series, and had the same feelings of book 1 and wasn't super impressed by 2 or 3, so I trust Emily's opinion. I don't need to waste my time with the rest of the series, and I certainly will never reread this book. Nor would I want to lend that to friends and family. They don't need to experience that. Okay, Indigo Ridge from the Edens series. I thought I had the second book in the series, but maybe I read it online or like on my Kindle. So I've read about books 1 and 2 in this series, and this is a series I could see myself continuing on with, but I believe it's still on Kindle Unlimited, and I rated this book a 3-star. I rated the second book a 3-star. It's not gonna be a 4 or 5-star series for me, and so I'm just okay with reading it on Kindle if I feel so inclined, but it's not a series I feel like I need to have the books on my shelf. So I'm ready to part ways and unhaul Indigo Ridge. I have a couple of thrillers here. I feel like with thrillers, I don't ever see myself rereading a thriller because I really already know what happens. The only thriller I could see myself rereading is Gone Girl. I still do really want to reread that. But I have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I thought this was a good time. I just will say I felt like the plot twist was like a bit unbelievable. But I also really enjoyed the one he released last summerish time, last October. What was it? I see the red cover, the cliff. That was really good. So I definitely want to read more Riley Sager. I just don't really feel a need to have the thrillers on my shelf. And I think going forward, I might just, I like to listen to thrillers. That's the way that I've found I like to consume them most. So if I'm going to spend the money, I think I might just purchase Audible thriller books in the future, because I will likely just continue to unhaul them. I have The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I also really enjoyed this, but don't see myself rereading. Okay, Layla by Coho. I've still never read a Coho book, but I honestly just don't feel inclined to. If I were to read one, I likely would read, is it The Last of Us? Or am I making that up? Is that like a show or a movie? What is the one so popular? I'll post it over here. But I know there's trigger warnings for like an abusive relationship, and I just feel like based on what I've heard about that book, it might just hit a little too close to home. It might be just way too triggering. I read the book, I think it was Blockshot by Kennedy Ryan, and I had no idea going into that book that had like major trigger warnings, and that was such a good book, but I also was extremely triggered, and I'm not someone who would think of myself as being a triggered person, but just knowing that, I feel like the one Coho book that I might be interested in reading would just potentially be too triggering, so I'm not going to. I have no interest in reading this. I also just feel like I don't keep up with like a lot of pop culture-y things, but I feel like Coho is like controversial now, and not just because like people make fun of you if you read her books, so like I feel like she's a controversial person, so I just kind of want nothing to do with that. Okay, I have this one. I've owned this book twice. It's Tim Grover's Relentless. I used to be so into reading like self-help or self-improvement books, and I've tried to get through this book a couple of times and I just can't. The things that I picked up from this book I really enjoy, but I just cannot get myself to finish it. So we're gonna unhaul it. Tim Grover he's like not a mind coach. Does my brain work? Like a life coach basically, for like, he was for Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, and like the things that I have read in this book are truly fascinating. I just don't see myself reading it or finishing it in the near future. I've owned it twice. Okay, I have 2 books by Rosie Danon. I have The Roommate, which I read and really enjoyed, but I don't see myself reading it again. I rated this 4 stars at the time. I don't know that I would rate it 4 stars if I reread it, just because it was like a light, fluffy romance, but I feel like, you know, the more books that you read, the more you have to compare to, and so I don't know that this would currently be a 4-star read, but this was a really fun, just cute romance. This has to do with like a sex worker, so it's a very sex positive book, and I found it entertaining. So I was really excited to then read the second book that's kind of like an standalone, stand on its own, but in the same series. What is the word I'm looking for? Interconnected standalone. Oh, I thought we were gonna move along without me getting it. Anyway, I was excited about this one. I read about 140 pages in this and could not get into this book, so I'm ready to just be done with this. Some of the books that you're seeing today are books that I included in These Books Will Self-Destruct If I Don't Read Them, and I've already made the decision for myself that they're leaving. We're not reading them this year. Okay, I have Allie Hazelwood's Love on the Brain. I actually recently read this book and I enjoyed it, but I definitely like Love Theoretically better, and I don't ever see myself rereading this book, but I do see myself potentially rereading Love Theoretically, so I'm keeping that one, but ready to just move on from that one. I also recently read X's and O's. I think I read this in February. I really enjoyed this book as well. Cute, cozy romance, but it wasn't like a 5-star read, so I just don't see myself taking the time to like reread a 4-star romance, you know? That's just kind of how I feel about it, so we'll pass it along to someone else to get a chance to read it. Beach Read by Emily Henry. I know this is a super unpopular opinion, but I just did not like this book. I just thought it was fine. I thought it was kind of boring. It took me a little bit to read it. I don't get the hype. I'm so sorry. And I don't see myself rereading that. Assistant to the Villain I read last October. You know, this book had its moments where I thought it was gonna be a really good book. I was so excited when I read the synopsis of this book. I think I read about this book like at the back of Fourth Wing, and I was so excited to like, you know, I just got done reading Fourth Wing. I wanted to like dabble into more fantasy books, and this sounded like such a cute little fantasy, and I just was so bored the majority of the time reading this. I believe this is actually in a series. I won't be continuing out of the series. Another Tessa Bailey book, Happenstance. This was trash. This was absolute garbage. This is a, I think, wide, do they call it a wide shoes? What do they call this? I forget. I should know this. Basically like a girl and 3 guys, and they like do inappropriate things all together at the same time. I thought I would really enjoy this, but first of all, the main character in this book was just so unlikable and just like dumb and boring in my opinion. And I do not understand how she like captured the attention of these 3 male characters. And like the spicy scenes were like fine, but I also just like, no, I just thought this was absolutely awful. I think I gave this a very generous 2 stars, but this was a complete waste of purchasing. So honestly, I feel like it would be a disservice to actually pass this along to anyone. But if anyone else wants to, you know, if anyone else wants the opportunity, I will be you know, it'll be on Pango Books for a very low cost. The Lost Apothecary, I just have no interest in reading. It's sat on my shelf for a couple of years, and not once have I been like, oh, I think maybe I want to read that today. Not once. Not once. Payback's a Witch. I thought about keeping this through spooky season, but I just feel like I purchased this like right when I was starting a booktube channel, and I was like, I need to read all the seasonal books and like be so witchy and like read with the season. And it's like, I'm just gonna read what I want to read, and I don't think I'm ever gonna want to read this book, so I'm not gonna make myself. The Nanny by Lana Ferguson, about an OnlyFans gal who becomes a nanny for this guy. I thought it sounded like a really hoot and hollering good time. I think I got over 100 pages into this book, and I just wasn't into it. Like, I was just like, this is so boring. Like, this is so boring. Wasn't gonna waste my time finishing it. I have the first book in the Shatter Me series. I actually ended up listening to the majority of this series, and I really enjoyed listening to it, but I have it on Audible, and I don't see myself like actually reading this series. I feel like I've already like consumed the series, so I don't see myself honestly going back to listen to it again either. But I just have the one first book in the series in my collection, so like I don't have a purpose for this sitting on my shelf. I also own this on Audible, so if I really want to consume it again, I can listen to it again. Speaking of witchy books, I don't really see myself reading. This is one I'm like kind of back and forth on. I'm like, I feel like it says Rye Dark and Deliciously Witchy. I feel like when I was like posting this to Pango Books, like it'll give like a review or synopsis of the book, and I was like, do I actually want to keep this? Not once have I felt motivated to read this, except for when the freaking synopsis ended up in front of my face, and then I read it and I was like, maybe, and then I was like, no. Velvet Was the Night. I got 11 pages into this and I was so confused. And I just don't think after that experience with those 11 pages of confusion, I don't see myself ever wanting to pick this up again, which is such a shame because the cover of this book honestly is everything to me. Like, I love the cover. I think it's beautiful and I want this to be just like such a cool book. Maybe it is, but I don't think I'll ever know. Okay, I have the entire series. What do they call this one again? Oh, the Off-Campus series. So I read the first book, The Deal. I also read this book during a very traumatic time in my life, and I think I rated this 5 stars. And truthfully, if I read this again, I would probably rate this like a 4, 4.5, maybe even a 5. This was such a wholesome, spicy, good time, and I really enjoyed it. But not once have I felt motivated to pick up the rest of the series. I started to read The Mistake, and maybe it will be a mistake for me to unhaul this series, but it sat on my shelf for over a year at this point in time, and I just don't see myself moving forward with it. And I think it might be on Kindle Unlimited, and honestly, even if it isn't, I think I'll be okay if I've only read The Deal. I would recommend The Deal. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people really do enjoy this series, but I've also heard that The Deal is like the best book. I've heard maybe like The Score, The Goal is also really good, but there's so many other books out there. There's so many other books I'm more excited to read, so I'm just gonna try and find a book I want to read. All right, my camera battery's about to die. I kind of want to finish this before it does. I have The Intern. I got it from Book of the Month. I don't know, I just wasn't feeling like it, like keeping it on the shelf for no reason. It's newer to my shelves too. I did read None of This Is True by Lucid Jewel last year, as well as The Last Word. Again, 2 really great thrillers. Really enjoyed them. Would highly recommend both of these. I believe I rated this either a 4.5 or a 5. And then this, I believe I rated a 4. I would, if my mom liked thriller books, she doesn't, but if she did, I would recommend these 2 to her. Yeah, part of me is like, maybe I would keep these on my shelf as like recommendations, but no, I don't have the space for it. I don't have the space. I can pop pictures on the screens if I'm doing like a recommendations video. We're good with this decision. Someday, if I really want a library, I can make my own library again. But the last book I have is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. I've tried to read this book a number of times and I literally just can't get into it. Don't care about it. Don't see myself ever reading it. So that is that. Those are all of the books that I am unhauling. I would love to know if you've unhauled any books so far in 2024. Do you think I'm making any mistakes in my unhaul? Let me know. But that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch and for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.